on the table. And I would like to start with Dijana Pavlovic. You didn't expect so soon, eh? But I think you are very well shaped to give a kind of to start this whole discussion with a reality check from Italy, where you work. And well, I would like you to kind of do the kickoff.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you, Ruus. Thanks to ERGO Network for inviting me here. I should make some kind of reality check. You please control time. And okay. Well, what I wanted to speak you about today is about two concrete situations that I saw in Italy, and I would like, in some way, to stimulate you, all of you, to reflect about context, political context that is changing in whole Europe. It's already changed, and the crisis that not only Roma and minorities and vulnerable persons are living in this moment in Europe, but also institutions crisis, also European Union crisis. So this requires from all of us some kind of different reflection on our future of Roma, on the future of European institutions, and how we will manage in the future. That's why I think the deeper reflection is needed, not only about funds, and not only about how the money will be allocated, but which kind of perspectives we have in the next European Parliament, for instance, in the next 10 years. So, what I'm coming from Italy, Ruus told you, and just in last few months, now we are living hard situation. It's not that before it was very nice, very good, but in this moment we can feel that the context is changing, the way is changing on how persecution on our people is going now changing, and how it will be. So let me tell you, before summer, probably some of you heard about the eviction in Camping River in Rome, in the city of Rome. I will be very short. I will not tell you everything about this eviction, but I will tell you some main elements. We are speaking about more or less 600 Romanian Roma persons that are living in Rome for more than 25 years. They were before evicted in 2007 when there were nomad emergency. They were evicted for small camps in Rome, and then the municipality created for them this place called the Camping River, out of the city, very far away, and so on. And this was private place. The municipality of Rome, since 2007, was paying $1.5 million per year for maintaining that place. They were living there in dignity. It was not like slum. It was, the conditions had some kind of dignity. It was clean. All the kids were going to school with a good success, and the new local administration from Five-Star Movement party decided, with the new persons came on the head of the Roma office in the city of Rome, called Monica Rossi. Some of you can know this person. Decided to overcome the camps. This was like, this is another example on how local administrations are using desegregation, the idea of desegregation policies on Roma to evict and to destroy Roma communities. So, said we are overcoming the camps, we need to overcome the camps, we will overcome this camp, we will give to the people the solutions which are not segregating. And then I think, maybe Dominique can help me after, because I'm not sure, it was like public declarations that European resources were used for this operation, from European, I think from DG employment or something like this. I'm not sure, Dominique, you know better than me. But however, what the municipality does is to offer to these people the support to rent the home on the private market with 8,000 euro per 2 years, 200 something per month of the support to rent the home on private market. So they told them, you go around, you find the place, you make the contract, and then the municipality will give you 200 and something euro per month to help you. They didn't think about how the people will, for instance, survive, because they had precarious works. So if you invest for 2 years in this kind of projects on people, after these 2 years, if the people are not autonomous, they will finish on the street again. And this happened in other situations a lot. We saw these kind of things. But however, these people went to rent the home in the agencies searching for the home, and one family found one person who wanted to rent the home to them, because they were going to the agency saying, okay, this is our address, nomad camp, the municipality will support us with the money, will guarantee for us if you find and they just said, okay, thank you, goodbye. So what, the municipality said, okay, but we offer to you this kind of resources, you didn't find nothing, so it's up to you now. The bulldozers came, and they evicted the place without any kind of solution. The result on this are, one more minute, okay. The results on this are 140 kids that stopped to go to school, the people that are living on the street. So yes, I could speak a lot, but I will try, I have to finish. My questions, more than answers, are, if European money was used, and Andor said it before, not properly, and didn't help Roma people in all these years, and in some situations get worse, the situation, destroy the life to the people. If these kind of things are used from the local governments, desegregation is good word. But if now Northern League in Italy is saying, okay, we are for desegregation, so we evict. And we don't recognize your right to, for instance, for the people that are working with merry-go-round, with Sinti, that are living for centuries like this, and they want to continue to live, not in the camps, but in their own properties with the mobile houses and all these things. Now they made a law to consider it urbanistic abuse. And then they act like it is not about Roma, it is about the legality, So how we can discuss and go deeper and understand big or small money, as Romeo was saying, but how it will be effectively help, and how the European Commission can find a way to confront and dialogue more in legal level, as Romeo said, with the people, and what are really the priorities of communities, not only of the national state, of local administration, of European Commission, but also about our communities, because our communities have their own priorities. If we don't find the mediation, you can invest as much as money you want, but it will never work. And then we should maybe ask about, anti-Gypsyism and all these things, how the kids, the children that are living 5, 6, 7 evictions, and there are only 10, how they look at the institutions, if we speak about trust. Which kind of relationship they can have with institutions, with the states, with authorities. They will not have any kind of relation. They will refuse any kind of authorities. So which kind of citizens, European citizens, we are growing up in this kind of, mediation, as you said, we can discuss with the national states, because the priorities are wherever, but most of all are in our communities. And the priorities of our communities have to become the priorities of national states and also of European institutions. Otherwise, it will be always paternalistic relationship. Thank you.
Thank you, Dijana. It was a very good appetizer for this discussion. I already have some very nervous person sitting behind me who wants to answer to this. You now want to answer to it? But 10 seconds, yeah? Okay.
I just want to say that there is no EU money in EU funding involved in Camping River.
Okay.
That's
well,
all.
I excuse myself, but we read it all of the newspaper, the declaration of local authorities that are speaking that they use European money. So this is only from newspapers data.
There is a mix with another EU-funded project which concerns other camps in Rome, which will be gradually closed over 3 years. We're not talking of evictions, it's a mid-term, long-term project which is supported by a co-funding of ERDF and ESF, but which is separate. Some of the press and the municipality, the city of Rome, they have mixed a bit both things, but these are separate issues. Camping River is an Italian issue between Italians.
Thank you. That's a good thing. Actually, with this kickoff, there's a very important question on the table. How can we understand the functioning of EU funding better when it comes to how it's applied on local level? So the Campi River in Roma is one of the examples in how national and local governments interpret EU policies or EU guided principles and how they apply them on local level, and it's not a very positive example. But maybe Mr. Andrey Ivanov from the Fundamental Rights Agency, maybe he can give us some other examples of how partnerships on local level have contributed to an improvement of the position of Roma.
Thank you very much. I'm switching my timer. So in the 7 minutes I have allocated, I will be able only to encourage you to read the report which I'm launching today. We are launching this report today. The report is called Working with Roma, Participation and Empowerment of Local Communities. And I'm really happy to launch it today because for several reasons. First of all, it goes straight into the topics which we are discussing and will be discussing. And second, this is a report on a project which is I'm really proud of. I'm not often always proud of what we are doing, but this is really something that is worth reading. The first two conclusions which we formulate as opinions of the report state exactly what was stated in the previous session, promoting meaningful participation of Roma in activities that affect them and building trust among communities to ensure success. There's more than that, communicating in transparent, accessible manner, paying attention to local community relationships and so on. But the important thing is that the way this report was done was reverting the sequence in many cases, how usually projects are done. Instead of going and doing something for the Roma communities in the field and report always success, we did the opposite. We went to the people and asked them, you have a small grant, go and do what you think makes sense, is meaningful for your community, for your people, for people around you. And then the only thing we are interested not in having the successes, we always report successes, but having precisely documented the process. If it is success, why, how it was successful. If it was failure, it was even better. But we want to know what failed, at which stage, what measures were taken, if any, and just to learn from this. And we had a lot of interesting things. The project was implemented in 21 localities in 11 member states. So then, very different, including Italy, by the way, not Rome. Very different in terms of context, in terms of what people were doing, but the things which we came as conclusions to many of us were not particularly surprising. And some of you may ask also, why repeat something like this? First, because we all have expert knowledge, but that is not enough at policy level, unfortunately. When I say and go, well, I know that this is like that, usually I'm asked, based on what you're having these findings. And my 18 years of experience or academic studies doesn't count. You need to have solid proof, and this report is based on solid methodology. It is a proof of some things which we are really aware that actually we know. But most importantly, we also touch upon things which were not or still are not very well known, and we go several steps further than just showing what are the problems, but presenting some real examples, real experiences. 21 of them, we can go to the internet, and really there is a lot. I won't go into this because of the 3 minutes 36 seconds which I have left, but a few things I want to mention. First of all, there is more than these opinions which we have. Simply, we do not want to put up front certain things which came out from the project for various reasons. One thing which is, for me, was personally shocking was the deeply engraved culture, not of anti-Gypsies. I mean, this is something which we're always talking about, and it is there, but deeply engraved culture of supply-driven mentality. People are already, there is a whole generation out there which know there is funding to be absorbed, let's go and absorb it. In one of the meetings in one of the localities, I don't want to mention the country, when we presented the idea, the logic, the first question which the Roma activists, local leaders asked was, I understand everything. Tell me, what do you want? Soft measures or hard measures? Everything was already structured along the apparently expected logic of the project, and the guy was ready. It took us several months to explain that, no, we're not interested for you doing our idea. Go and implement your idea, your vision, and then when the person understands, then things started clicking. Another interesting example was, what do you do when people define as a priority something which is not exactly in your usual priority list? This was one of the localities in Hungary. I can go on and on on this, but the conclusion which comes out of this is that we very often talk about participation, the need of it, but it is really very, very difficult to make it meaningful, because we are often stop at the level of some rituals, tick the box, Roma consulted, Roma participated, but basically not giving any particular real role for these communities. One of the reasons why is the way the funding mechanisms and the project design are formulated. Currently, they are not integrating participatory approaches, or if they do, it is very formalistic. There are no mechanisms which really will provide the people with genuine opportunities to do that. When talking about funding, another thing which comes out of the report is the reverted pyramid. We have a lot of money somewhere on the top, Brussels, nation states levels, and the closer you go to the communities level, this stream goes thinner and thinner. The number of the layers of intermediaries which are facilitating the process, monitoring the implementation, evaluating the result, building the capacity of the people, you name it. There's so many things which just transform the Roma inclusion process into a job creation for many people around. Is really depressing. I really would like to invite you to read this. you will be, I hope, pleasantly surprised. And did I miss anything? No, I think I'm fitting into.
Ooh,
Yeah.
wow, perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrey. It was very interesting. This funding-driven commitment, I think many of us here in the room will recognize that. And also the fact that in the funding mechanisms, the participatory approaches are missing. And that's why we also invited Valeriu Capraru. Yes? He's the president of the FNEGAL, which is the National Federation for Local Action Groups. Actually, they have a kind of, we share the experience of using the community-led local development policy tool in Romania, together with the Federation of Local Action Groups, which is not necessarily Roma-driven, but they work together. So it's a good example of partnerships, and also using the EU prepared policies where participatory principles are very deeply ingrained. Yeah, can I invite you to the table?
Thank you. Bună seara tuturor. Din păcate eu nu vorbesc limba engleză și am să rog pe colegul meu Daniel Gebeldinger să-mi traducă. V-am pregătit.
Hello everybody. Unfortunately I don't speak English and I will translate for him.
V-am pregătit un material, se cheamă Oportunități și provocări pentru romi în cadrul galurilor din România.
I prepared the material which is called Opportunities and Challenges for the Roma within the lags in Romania.
Fiind în limba engleză în expunere, am să rog pe Daniel să citească, dar până atunci aș vrea să vă spun ceva despre apariția acestui material.
Being in English, we will just go through very fast, but before to look at the material, I want to tell you something.
Acest material și această strategie pe care o aplicăm în România se datorează unei munci umăr la umăr, o muncă de 3 ani, 4 ani împreună.
This material and all the results, all the work, it's actually the result of a common work which lasts already since 4 years.
O muncă asiduă din care am învățat și eu de la Daniel cum stă problema și cum se poate face o abordare asemănătoare abordării noastre de jos în sus.
Hard work in which we as federation we also learn from our partner from Daniel how you do an approach from bottom up.
Un parteneriat prin intermediul căruia am străbătut întreaga țară, în toate regiunile din România și în care am, pas la pas, am descoperit exact problematica întregilor comunități.
A partnership through which we went in all the regions of Romania and we have seen problems from more communities.
După parcurgerea acestui material, aș avea rugămintea să mai ascultați o încheiere din care să vă exprim părerea noastră a celor din grupurile de acțiune locală și cum vedem noi o abordare comună și integrată.
After going through the material, I want to just say a conclusion, like a closure, how we as National Federation of Flag, we see a integrated approach. I don't know if I need to read or in Romania, according to the data provided by the National Strategy on Social Inclusion and Poverty Reduction, 1 in 5 Romanians are struggling with poverty due to insufficient income, and among the most affected are the Roma people living in the rural areas and in small towns. Also, in Romania, the rural poverty often overlaps with areas with sizable Roma communities, since 63% of the individuals who declared themselves as Roma ethnics in 2011 live in rural areas. Almost half of the marginalized rural areas are inhabited by Roma communities. The European funds for agriculture and rural development in 2014-2020 have the potential to change this paradigm through a bottom-up approach, community local-led development, led local development, or how it's called in Romania, community local-driven. Inclusion of Roma living in rural areas through CLD, it was a priority for the National Federation of LAG, and also for the National Rural Development Program 2014-2020. In 2017, the National Federation of LAG and the Romanian Center for Public Policies, CRPE, carried the research, and we find out that the local action groups in Romania proposed to assist persons at risk of poverty and social exclusion within their territories, and this was happening in 152 LAGs from Romania out of the 239, which means approximately 64%. In 110 LAGs happened. 72% of the responded they have inclusive measures in their strategies. Those measures consist in vocational training, entrepreneurship, labor market access, medical services, social services, financing for projects aimed to preserve traditions and crafts and things like that. In 2018, the Federation ran another check with the members, and the result was that out of the 239 LAGs, they are implementing projects which have the value of 600 million euro. Out of those, 130 LAGs have social infrastructure measures included in the strategy, which are having the value of 20 million euro. Other 72 LAGs included a social measure combined with action targeting minority groups, in most of the cases Roma minority, with a value of 29 million euro, which means they are around 49 million euro in total, which can target Roma. Also, 202 LAGs included in these strategies at least one measure for inclusion of the Roma minority, with a total allocation of the 49 million. Okay, one more thing. All those funds are coming from the Agri, but for the functioning of those projects, like if they invest in infrastructure, there is a special measure in ESF, which have 106 million euro just for running those projects. What they think that they are the biggest challenges is that the integrated approach through community-led local development concerning the specific needs of the Roma and the other vulnerable groups affected by poverty in rural areas must be maintained and improved, increase. Like they need to do more for that, not just what was done until now. And for the next programming period, we need to think on the multi-fund approach also in rural areas, a more intense one.
În final, am pregătit o scrisoare către toate instituțiile abilitate în a pune sprijinul și a...
On the final starting from this meeting, we prepared a letter for all the institutions from Romania and EU institutions.
Tocmai pentru a exprima viziunea noastră în ceea ce înseamnă o abordare integrată, asemănătoare CRLD-ului din zona urbană,
in which we want to express our request to have an integrated approach similar with the urban one,
pentru a dezvolta comunitățile rurale care în acest moment sunt într-o mare diferență, deși sunt foarte puțini kilometri între o zonă rurală și una urbană. Diferențele sunt imense, iar pentru asta trebuiesc fonduri astfel încât să echilibrăm
in order to develop the rural communities in the same way like the urban ones, because even if there are very small distances between rural and urban, there is huge gaps, and to have a similar approach also in urban like in rural like in urban, we need to have the same type of funds available and the same actions.
Vă mulțumesc tare mult și dacă vreți să mă închei cu...
Thank you.
Mulțumim.
If you want to ask any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a nice example of how EU policies and local realities are kind of shaping how funding and the way how funding has been designed. I think this call for integrated approach is very important, and I also hear it back from Andrey Ivanov that somehow we have to think more smartly in how to combine things and how funds can be also funds from the EU level can be combined in multi-funding approaches. I would like to ask Dominique Bé to also elaborate on the Romact program, which he has been responsible for the last few years.
Thank you, Ruus. First, thank you very much to ERGO for inviting myself and also the Commission via myself. We're so congratulating you for your 10 years anniversary. The local dimension is something which the Commission has recognized a long time ago, and specifically DG Employment is supporting several initiatives which act at the local level. So we support you, ERGO, we support Eurocities, and I will talk about specifically the Romact program, which is another initiative which we finance. Next. So in short, the Romact program was launched in 2013. It's a joint program between the Council of Europe and the Commission. It has been implemented in more than 130 municipalities. Today we focus mainly on Romania, Bulgaria. And to give you an idea, we invest, broadly speaking, 25,000 euros per municipality per year, and on average we implement the program for 2 years in a given municipality. So the total investment is about 50,000 euros per municipality over the cycle. And with this, and this was the idea, the program managed to generate more than 100 million euros in more than 100 projects. Because the idea is to have a trigger effect, not to finance directly, and I will explain this very shortly, but to help better use EU funds as we discussed earlier. Next please. So to summarize, what is the approach pursued by the Romact program? The starting point is to improve the living conditions of all citizens, including the Roma, to avoid what we discussed before, issues of segregation, rejection between majority, minority. So we approach the municipality as a whole. And there are several principles which are implemented, used to implement the Romact program. So it is local, it is integrated, as was invited earlier, participatory, that's why I'm invited here today, I suppose. And it's also what we found, we need to be adaptable and also to aim at sustainability, to avoid this project approach where after the end of the project everything stops and we look for the next project. Here the idea is to invest in the long term. And the action is taking place at two levels. It's building the capacity of local authorities basically to do their job, so to be able to design and implement policies, strategies, measures which have a focus on the inclusion, integration of all citizens, including the Roma. And at the same time, because we believe in a participatory approach, we need to build the capacity of Roma to participate, which is not a given. And finally, and here I join what was said earlier, we do not see funding or getting funding for projects as an objective. It's a means, but the objective is improving the quality of life of people. Next slide. So, in short, how it's done. So over 2 years, there are 4 steps which are followed. The first one is to assess the needs, and then I join what Andrey said earlier. We do not jump to the project and to the funding. We go step by step, identifying what are the needs, how to address those needs. Because sometimes people say, I want more money. But the idea is not to give cash to people, it's to give them education so that they get a job, and then they get more money. So we have to translate the needs which are expressed into solutions which are sustainable. And so this is put into plans which are then translated into a number of steps which are basically small projects. And finally, we reach the stage of finding the funding for those projects. So it's a process which takes about 2 years, in which we teach to local authorities and also to the Roma minority to learn how to work along those lines, so that even after the 2 years, they continue to have this logic, because new needs will emerge, new solutions need to be found, and new projects, measures need to be funded and implemented. Yes. So now about the lessons, what we learned. It's not easy. So that there are many challenges which come at various levels. The first one is without political will, things will not happen. So there is a need to either find a municipality where there is political will from the mayor and the city council, local council, to do something, or to trigger at their level the will, to make them understand that they have to do something, because otherwise it will be worse for everybody in the municipality. Then, of course, there are several aspects which came also. The fact that national strategies do not translate into local strategies in an effective way. There's really a lost in translation issue with national strategies. And also that overall, local policies are not inclusive by default. There is also a need to change the way issues like poverty and other housing, access to education, access to employment are addressed by the municipalities, so that they become more inclusive for everybody, including the Roma. Second is politics are complex, in particular in the countries where Romact is implemented, and there are all these issues which make long-term planning, long-term strategies more difficult. Is that the political cycles are relatively short, and as soon as a mayor is elected, he's already thinking about the next election, and not to take any steps that would put him at risk in the next election. So it's the fact that there is always an election going on, national, local, it never stops, and during the times of elections, nothing moves. So it's a barrier. Then also, the way politics are implemented is often involving clientelism, favoritism, a lot of things which lead to decisions which are not rational. You build social housing, but in the end it's friends and family of the mayor who gets housing and not those who need it. Then, that time will be short. Okay, 1 minute. The other aspect, and that's where it's the easiest in a way, is administrative capacity. We are facing municipalities, as was said earlier. The poorest are the least equipped, and they have the biggest needs. So to build their capacity, and we are talking of municipalities who do not have a computer, who still take the minutes of council meetings on a notebook, on a And finally, most Roma live in countries where active citizenship is still an exotic concept. There is not a culture of participating, of coming to consultation meetings, on committing oneself for the community. It's probably explained by history, plus it's made worse by migration. When you finally, after 2 years, build the community spirit, you get the community to learn how to express, the Roma to express their needs, they migrate. And we start again with another group of people. So that's another dimension. So finally, the last one. So success factors. I would say 3 points. One needs to have at the local level to make progress is commitment of the majority, mainly the mayor, local council, but also the Roma. Everybody needs to be committed, and not that one is waiting for the other one to provide a service. It's a joint responsibility. It takes time because we are talking of changing mentalities and changing the way of the logic of people, both on the majority and minority. And finally, one needs to involve all the stakeholders, so it means sometimes the county level, the school, the various people who have a say. It's not just the mayor and the Roma, it's many actors, plus to look at any funding. There is funding at municipal level, there is funding at county level, there is funding at national level, and then also EU level and others like the Norwegians or the Swiss. So one needs to be flexible and look at the logic. These are my needs, where can I get the support? And one is sometimes surprised about how much can be done with little money. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. With this presentation, but also with those of the others, I think we all have some ingredients for the elaboration of the post-2020 EU Roma policy, and I'm very much delighted to have a number of these points being reflected in that policy. So I guess we can count on it. I would like to ask Maaike Buyst from the Eurocities to take the floor on Ghent, but also I would like to know in what respect Ghent, as a member of the Eurocities, also engaged other towns in their work on Roma participation.
Thank you very much. As a vice chair of the Cities Network, Eurocities Working Group on Roma Inclusion, I will tell more about the local partnerships. Through the years, the participating cities exchange good practices and challenges of Roma inclusion policies, and working with Roma communities is one aspect of that. Myself, I work for the city of Ghent as policy worker on migration, so we have a lot of practice in our city ourselves. The local level is the level that is closest to the communities. And for an effective policy on Roma inclusion, you need a couple of things. And one of the things is that at a local level, it all starts with a local integrated and coordinated approach. And for that, you have some elements needed. First of all, there is a political willingness. It's already mentioned with other people here on the panel. Without the political willingness, you can't do anything. Second of all, a good exchange within different local services. That's why the integrated approach, you need the services on health, education, work, and housing on board as well. But most important is to include NGOs, volunteers, civil society, and the Roma NGOs in the process of designing, implementing, and evaluating integrated Roma inclusion policy, and to have that policy being effective. There are different instruments for doing that. First of all, there are the mediators. As well in Ghent, we use mediators for building bridges between services and communities, but as well building bridges between the Roma and non-Roma communities with the goal of empower them. And it's important that some of the mediators are part of the Roma communities present in the city. Second, there is a dialogue. Some people set up consultation platforms, like in Berlin, there is a structural platform. Roma NGOs are part of the steering committee that goes through the Roma inclusion policy there. Then there is the instrument of the advisory board of a Roma council. Gothenburg, for example, has a Roma council, and they seek the city seeks advice from the Roma council when they are implementing and designing policies that have their effect on the communities. Another two examples are the support Roma organizations. For example, in Ghent we have a grant system that finances activities for organizations, and when, for example, a Roma organization wanted to do an activity, they can seek for money to have their activity been done. And then there is, for example, Leeds. They facilitate self-organization of Roma communities. They have a very good project. It's called the Migrant Access Project, and that project trains natural leaders from migrant groups as volunteer advocates within their own communities. And one of the projects they have is Pomoc. It's set up for and through the Roma community, and people can drop by to ask all of their questions about health, about education, about administration. And it is a first step for people from the community there in Leeds that have trouble reaching regular services, and the city facilitates by offering them an office within the city building for 2 times a week. So there is the exchange of the city and the people from the community. Those are all instruments for having a good partnership, but there are also challenges, and one of the challenges is the budget. If Roma communities participate on the policy-making process and they do proposals, and because of the lack of budget, the proposals can't be executed, there is a loss of motivation and frustration to be more involved of participation. And another challenge is the existing tools for participation we use. It's not always tailor-made, so there is a need for tailor-made instruments and methods that everyone from every community can participate on the design level. And another and last challenge is that it's sometimes hard to find people to participate, because participation, like in activities or in advisory boards or consultation structures, are most of the time voluntary. And we see it in our city as well, that lots of people from Roma communities are looking for jobs, are having a difficult life situation, and it's not that easy that they are voluntarily participating. So that's my concluding remark, I guess. I'm within time.
You're perfect in time. Okay. Thank you so much. It's very encouraging to see that the city of Ghent and the other cities in the Eurocities network have elaborated and identified those tools and kind of entry points to the communities in order to work more closely and to give them the place and the kind of support base to establish this partnership. I think it's a nice example. Okay, last but not least, Tobias Mayr. He is from the Council of Europe Congress of Local and Regional Authorities and involved in the development of the anti-Gypsyism declarations that has been signed by quite a number of local municipalities. But here's the floor for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting us. I think we've already heard quite a mix of interventions from best practice examples like Ghent to quite worrying numbers, as for example mentioned in the FRA report. There is also in the FRA report mentioned that local authorities often fluctuate in their interest and commitment depending on whether elections are coming or not, and I think that's from our experience certainly true. Although these latest findings are without doubt serious, worrisome, and simply sad, I would like to talk about positive developments that we've seen in 2018 from the Congress side. I'm here today speaking on behalf of Mr. John Warmisham, who is the Congress spokesperson for Roma and traveler issues, who can't be here unfortunately because there was an emergency in his hometown, and I hope you are okay with me as a replacement. The other day, John and I had a chat, and we were talking about our work and what we've done in 2018. And despite of the numerous and continuous challenges and attacks and shocking news statistics, we both agreed that 2018 was not a bad year for the efforts towards Roma inclusion on the local level. Rather on the contrary, for us at the Congress, 2018 clearly showed that obstinateness in the work with mayors and regional representatives pays off. The Congress, as you know, dedicates a lot of work on Roma inclusion, predominantly in the framework of the European Alliance of Cities and Regions for Roma Inclusion. Within these alliance, we set up national networks for mayors for Roma inclusion, and these networks they function as discussion platforms in which mayors can meet regularly to exchange views and good practice models, because we witness that there's oftentimes good initiatives within certain municipalities, but the problem is that they don't talk to each other and they don't share their good practice examples. This is why we believe that setting up dialogue platforms is important. They can also, of course, strengthen the dialogue within the mayor community within a country, but also, of course, with the Roma civil society. Working with local authority has not always been easy, but during the last year we saw significant improvements, commitments, and political will in many municipalities. In Ukraine, for example, despite of the shocking rise in anti-Gypsyism, sadly culminating in the series of attacks in spring, our Ukrainian network that was set up in 2017 did not stand beside and look, but implemented 12 individual projects in which they worked together with the communities and local issues. The 10 mayors of this network launched, for example, projects to diminish school dropout rates, enhance monitoring mechanisms, support cooperation between Roma NGOs and local authorities, and do research on Roma IDPs. Or take Greece, for example. We went to Greece in April to set up a network of mayors. We had 28 mayors and deputy mayors come and attend our seminar, and they shared a lot of best practice strategies. They did a lot of, they brought up many issues, and this created really a good dialogue between mayors who are interested in enhancing situation in Greece. And finally, I can also report successfully from Albania, where we had our first meeting of an Albanian network of mayors in October. We had 30 municipalities interested in this network, and we will now set up a network in 2019. Dialogue is always the first step for action, and I believe exchange is always the first step for cooperation. We believe that establishing a regular political dialogue and exchange is the precondition for the implementation of successful and equal activities for better inclusion. And in 2018, I have to say, we saw that political commitment and will on the local level grows. This is also reflected in terms of numbers. Was also already mentioned, we have a declaration against anti-Gypsyism. Our declaration against anti-Gypsyism, the only worldwide declaration against anti-Gypsyism that specifically acknowledges the impact that local authorities can have, has hit the 100th signature mark in 2018, and we currently count 116 signatures from 32 countries. Moreover, we see that from the EU level to local grassroots initiatives, we start acknowledging that anti-Gypsyism is the major barrier to full Roma inclusion, and this is another very good development in our perspective. And with our declaration, I think we have prepared a tool that is easy and effective to use in the fight against anti-Gypsyism. Signatories of this declaration, I have copies with me, they express their will to reject all forms of discrimination, violence, or incitement to hate speech against Roma in their municipalities or regions. They refuse to display, publish, or distribute in any way views and positions that could stir or incite anti-Roma sentiments. They even declare to refrain from any political alliance building or cooperation with political parties that incite racial or ethnic prejudices. So every mayor or elected regional representative can sign this declaration against anti-Gypsyism. thus taking a powerful stance against discrimination and racism towards Roma. And what I would like to underline here is that the declaration is not only interesting for mayors, but also as a powerful tool for the civil society, for NGOs, for citizens, because when you next time meet your local councillors, take the declaration with you and ask your local councillors or your mayors, did you already sign it? And if they say no, then ask them why. Because it will be pretty hard for local authorities to argue against a public stance against racism in the year 2018. So take it as a powerful tool to pressure local authorities and raise their awareness for anti-Gypsyism in local communities. The declaration is available in 34 languages, so this shouldn't be a problem. It's available online on our website of the Roma Alliance. And I have copies with me in French and English, but as I said, all the other languages are accessible online. And last but not least, I would like to conclude by saying that we also witness very, very positive developments on the European level, like many of you. Tom Wormsham and I attended the EU conference on anti-Gypsyism last week in Vienna, and we facilitated a workshop on the role of local authorities and the fight against anti-Gypsyism. And as you know, the outcome of those workshops will be transformed into recommendations for the European Commission to develop a European framework for national strategies after 2020. And also, Jérôme Schockenberg said in Vienna, the director of anti-discrimination of the Council of Europe, he ensured that the focus on local level action will remain one of the top priorities of the Council of Europe's post-2019 strategy. So we are very happy for this strong commitment for the local perspective and the local approach. And this gives us a lot of positive spirit for future work. And I would like to conclude with a quote from Soraya Post, which she said in Vienna. She said, "A country should be judged by how it treats its minorities, and I think these words should equally apply to the local level. A municipality should be judged by how it treats its minorities." Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tobias, Mayr. Okay, we have found a very interesting round of introductions, starting from the activist point of view, going through the action-oriented research on local level, taking into account how European and local policies are connected in the Romanian rural areas. Of course, the European-led program on local partnerships in Romania and Bulgaria at this moment. The examples of Ghent and other towns connected in Eurocities network, and at the end the Council of Europe Alliance, Congress of Local and Regional Authorities, and also not last but not least the Anti-Gypsyism Declaration, which can be a kind of starting point on what I touched upon after the presentation of Dominique on how does this how can these essential points that has been touched upon now be reflected in the future EU policy, and how do we make sure it will really and will be touch base on local level. So how can local developments and local partnerships be enhanced by future EU policy? This would somehow frame the discussion after these presentations. But we have now 20 minutes for floor discussion. So if there are questions from the floor on the people presenting, Dorte?
Hello, Dr. Elena. I'm from Emerging Engineer. I was just interested in the experiences of the Belgian lady on how to tailor-make initiatives, local initiatives, based on a rule-based strictness, but the need for flexibility. If you could maybe talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, okay.
I guess the flexibility is the challenge we are going through, but like in Gothenburg, you have the Roma Council or the Roma Board, and every time there is a meeting, people get paid. So that's one of the things they do. And tailor-made is for participation. It's easy that you launch a call on the website of the city, of the page of the city, the website, but that's not enough because a lot of migrant communities, like in Ghent, doesn't consult the website. So we have field workers that are working towards participation as well, and they are going in the field, in the streets, and they visit actually the self-organizations. So they come together, they meet, and our field workers take the time to talk to people and to listen one-on-one about the needs and the things, and then they can help them to build an organization, a self-organization, or to support them to have an activity, and it's through those activities that are held that we talk to people about policy issues as well. So it's not only the consultation of policies, but we try to have activities, and on the side we talk to people about their needs.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments from the floor? Yes, please.
Hi. My name is Miguel Chambel. I'm working at the Council of Europe, specifically in the In-School project, which is a project focused on promoting inclusive education. And my question goes to Dominique Bé. So what exactly can the Commission do in situations in which, for instance, in our project in Czech Republic, we're actively trying to promote inclusive education with a focus on Roma children, and when the governmental authorities are trying to pass legislation that runs counter into the very purpose of inclusion and of inclusive education, what can be the role of the European Commission in trying to prevent this from taking place?
Thank you.
It's already ongoing. There were already infringement procedures against a number of countries, including the Czech Republic. See at the back there is a colleague from DG Justice who could give you the technical details about this. But when there is EU legislation in a given area, if a country adopts a policy that goes against the principles of this legislation, EU legislation, the responsibility of the Commission is to make sure that EU legislation is complied by member states. So there will be an infringement procedures, which already took place, which already is ongoing for the Czech Republic and for other countries, specifically in the area of education. So there could be, if all what you describe is say substantiated with facts, there could be another procedure launched by the Commission against the Czech Republic. There could be if.
Thank you. More questions? Comments? Examples? I have just one thing that reminds a bit in my mind. It's like we started with Dijana about evictions, about very harsh examples, right? Going through more soft local policies, action research, and then to the more hardcore anti-Gypsyism measures. How could anti-Gypsyism be much more leading in policy developments? Now we have this social inclusion being I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that we now have a table full of lessons learned, with what are the pro and cons of thinking through the glasses of social inclusion. But what if the next EU policy would be much more based on the principles of anti-Gypsyism, so more an anti-racist and a more more protectionary approach? Would that be possible? Would it be helpful? We have so much experiences here on the table. Would it be something really new that we should kind of aim for the coming 2 years, or is it a dream? It's a question to everybody. Maybe we start with Tobias, because he's the one introducing it with the declaration. Maybe you can kind of forward-looking way of saying, okay, what if anti-Egyptians would be more leading in a kind of design of the macro policies, and how would it be helpful?
Well, from the Congress perspective, it would be great if we would acknowledge anti-Gypsyism more as the major barrier. And I think that this is kind of a common development. We saw it, this was mentioned in the FRA report, we saw it in the EU conference on anti-Gypsyism, that we start realizing that we can do a lot of things, but if we don't fight anti-Gypsyism, it will have little or no impact. And so I, from our perspective, we can really say that anti-Gypsyism is the major barrier to improvement, and that we are trying with our declaration as a tool to fight and to bring awareness to local authorities that anti-Gypsyism exists also in their municipalities, even if they deny it, and that, yeah.
Our view, built on empirical experience, is that discrimination and social exclusion are two sides of the same coin, and one cannot solve one aspect, one issue, without addressing the other one. Even if one would eliminate all the discrimination that exists in Europe, if the capacity to run a municipality does not exist, we will be happy together but disorganized. So it's still the issue of capacity of being able to design policies, finance them, implement them, will remain a challenge despite discrimination or not discrimination.
Thank you. Andrey?
Maybe unsurprisingly, I would tend to support what Dominique said in different words. I was thinking about these issues, and maybe it's because of my age. I remember the period when it was all about social exclusion. Then the pendulum went to another extreme. Now it's kind of tendency to see it all about anti-Gypsyism. I hope that there will be no another swing of pendulum, another something. Everything is something else, or maybe again social exclusion. Ideally, I would hope that we will always be able to keep the balance between the two, because we cannot stand only on one, like anti-Gypsyism or social exclusion, inclusion. So keeping both in mind and being aware of how they reinforce each other is very important. And I think we are still not understanding the structural issues, not structural discrimination, but the issues which contribute to anti-Gypsyism through the mechanisms of social exclusion, marginalization, stereotypes, which is linked also to poverty and extreme living conditions and all these things. So we need to be, I think, able to have a more nuanced view on this and have a more comprehensive and holistic approach to this issue. Somebody mentioned holistic approach today, but I think we are still in depth of this concept.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Do you like to say something, or?
No, I just agree that it's social exclusion and anti-Gypsyism. It has to be both, but I think that it can only work if you make it effective, and if there is anti-Gypsyism, that it is punishable, that the reaction on it is effective and concrete, so that step by step the thresholds will be uplifted.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Dijana, last word?
No, but she's the panel, so she can finish the...
Yeah, no, I would like to I think maybe we should understand that it is not that social inclusion and anti-Gypsyism are, in the balance it should be. The social exclusion and the poverty of Roma communities are the consequence of anti-Gypsyism. So on the base of social inclusion, of anti-Gypsyism, you know, the anti-Gypsyism is the base of how our communities, and anti-Gypsyism is not for less than years, it's less than centuries, okay? So the social exclusion of our communities is the consequence, simply consequence of this. And I think this, who project the policies should be clearly aware of this to tackle the problem on the basis. So the second thing, I think we should be also aware that anti-Gypsyism is the main thing in almost all European countries on which the votes are gained, you know? Like, it is not about capacity anymore of the municipalities to apply, to approach. It is about the will, you know, everybody said, but what it means that concretely, if the mayor should choose if he should use his capacities and include and make his community, or he should spread anti-Gypsy words and earn a lot of votes, he will most probably, in the majority of cases, he will choose to use anti-Gypsyism for his election campaigns. And this is the reality now, in this moment. So in Italy, we have this kind of idea that we are coming out from 10 years of mediatic campaign, you know, against Roma, that provoked that 80% of people doesn't see Roma as thieves like before, or, you know, dirty people, but now they see them as the privileged people and the parasites, you know, those who are having something more than the others because of the funds, because of all these things. So it is necessary not only to put anti-Gypsyism inside of the, you know, policy planning. It is necessary to understand how realistically, you know, to push the states, national states, to put the laws, to have some kind of legislation against the anti-Gypsyism. Otherwise, I don't think we can get out of this loop. I mean, in the beginning I said, I think we are discussing like we are not aware that the context changed, that the crisis changed everything. Get worse the Roma communities, but also put in the crisis European institutions, and we have next year the European elections, and we probably know how it will go, and we probably know how the next European Parliament will be. So, I mean, we should start to discuss knowing these things, not just ignore, you know, the moment that we live in, that we know what will produce next year, and then 2025, when all the national governments will be able to, you know, rethink their priorities, it will be another elections in that period. So, I mean, before Andor was speaking, you know, about more flexibility, so national states could change. I mean, we should start to think, you know, with the awareness in which kind of political moment we are living, and this is the moment that can stimulate us to find the new ways, or we can continue to do this. But okay, thank you.
Okay. Andrey wants to say. Andrey wants to say something, and then I will have some.
I would like to thank to Dijana, because she mentioned one thing which I want to highlight, but I think there was the sequence which was, maybe you correct me if I'm wrong. You mentioned social distance, although you did not call it social distance, Roma perceived as thieves and so on, and linked it to the funding. That's exactly, I think, one very precise, very concrete issue, which I think we need to address in order, as a result, to reduce anti-Gypsyism, because anti-Gypsyism is not something abstract. It is a result of very practical daily decisions, policies, and dynamics at the level of political economy at local level. Funding, why people are perceiving Roma as benefiting? Because there's so much funding which is nominally devoted to Roma inclusion, but nothing of this reaches Roma. But who knows that? What are the data on that? What are the indicators which say, okay, out of the 15 or whatever million reported as Roma inclusion, maybe a few 100,000 are really reaching the communities? No. So I think that's what I wanted, and thank you again for this, for raising this. I want to live to the day when there will be such a discussion and such results. To make the narrative on social exclusion and anti-Gypsyism based on the real issues, not abstract concepts, however they important are, because below the level of this conceptualization of the concepts are the real political economy, which funding, employment, poverty, all these things which need to be addressed. Simply, it cannot be, I think, addressed just with one, let's say, declaration or manifestation of political will. It's more than that.
Thank you. Claude, and then in the back. Mike?
Is this really? Maybe I just talk. I'll just talk.
Okay. Raise your voice.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think two things. One is, I mean, I think that's right. Like Dijana said, we really are in a moment. We at the UN like to sort of put the optimistic face on it, and and on we go. But also, I think it's very important to say that there are some really, really problematic things out there. I was unaware of this until I went to a completely different meeting. That the new Danish homelessness package was apparently put through on an argument in Parliament that we, Denmark, have a Roma plague. That was the argument. There was sort of voices in Parliament saying why sort of more restrictive measures on homeless need to be put through. And I say that only to say that I think I don't think we're hearing loud enough and based on facts enough how troubled things are out there. I mean, that's an invitation to sort of get back to the business of fact documentation, which I feel like, I mean, we're seeing some things go by that are unheard. I mean, the Tajani, or however you pronounce his name, thing in Rome was, I mean, that's a new one from the top level for a European official to go to Italy and explain why it should reject its non-austerity package because the money will just go away. Like, I mean, and you didn't use that word. I mean, it's information, I think. That's one thing. The second thing, I mean, I think on this question, the anti-Gypsyism, social inclusion thing, we see, I think, we see, I think I put this way. We see two Roma movements at the moment. We see one, which is, in effect, the community of people who are articulating the anti-Gypsyism idea and really shining a light down the road of where that should lead. And that's a very interesting discussion, about what it means for policy and things. And then there's another Roma movement that I think we see, which is the one that's sort of in the data, which is all of those parents that are pushing their children into education, and all of those parents that are, well, that's in the data. I mean, you have heightened school enrollment, you have heightened sort of dropped school dropout rates, you have dramatically heightened university participation. So, I mean, there's a push for inclusion, I feel like, sitting in the data. And also, I mean, we hear that when we just spend a lot of time working in France, where people are living in mud puddles. And if you meet someone, it's, I want a normal house, a normal job. It's a push into inclusion in society. And I think we need to wrap both of those things together. I think it's wrong to take in exclusion one or the other. They are both very important. And one you can name the sort of priority on anti-Gypsyism, and the other you can name the social inclusion part. But I think one is not doing justice to the full set of voices if one says, you know, it's one or the other or something like that. That's one thing. The other thing is, I mean, very crudely, right now, it's budget talking time for European Union, and there's a danger that the anti-gypsyism part drips into the DG Justice managed stuff, at which, no, really, that's where discourse and things like that, in which case it has this much money, but only part of this much of the budget, or it's also reflected in structural funding. But that's usually the social inclusion part, and that's this much money. You know, and it's been what we've had during this particular budget period, which admittedly is not going very well, and we need to fix that. But unless we wrap the two Roma movements together and say really it has to be both, then there is a real danger that it just goes, okay, well, if we're just talking about discourse stuff, then it falls into citizen values, justice. And look at how big that budget is really. I mean, it's nothing. European Parliament recommends raising it to nothing +1, you know, but it's a very small piece of what happens. If we want to continue to see people put in housing, then it also has to be richly reflected in the European Fund for Regional Development and the European Social Fund Plus and Erasmus Plus and the other pots of things that are for people out there.
Okay, I'm afraid we have to kind of round up. There are still three hands, but Marianne, you have
No, I can say it.
You can say it when you have the floor. Do you have something really very brief to add to what has already been said?
Very short. We had a meeting in Romania 10 days ago, the Roma Forum, and the discussion with us for what we will promote for next year, for the presidency, was we go for the speech on anti-Gypsies or where we fight for the Roma values like cultural values, identity, and what mean Roma, or we go with the speech on the social problem and inclusion, which will put the Roma always in the group of disadvantaged groups, which it's happening already since 20 years, and it's good, but the gap it's bigger and bigger. It's not efficient, because we have seen from practice that projects happening 3 years, 10 stop, or other 2 stop, again 2 years, again stop, because we know from practice that the EU funds are having those gaps between. And the local authorities learn to put all the funding for Roma in the pot of EU funds. And that's the biggest question which we had then. How we go? We go like an ethnic group who fight for his rights and fight against anti-Gypsies with all what's in, or we still stay a social. I know that it's important, those funds, but if it's social inclusion and Roma are this one group, they will be there. But we need to take care that the social inclusion happen with dignity and with the participation of the Roma, which right now it's not happening. Because I put also before the question, and Andrey gives me a very nice political answer. Also in this moment, we have a lot of money in Romania for Roma, but there are no Roma NGOs or people who to spend those money correct. We have a big problem. Like, we convinced the LAGs to put the money there, and they are there, we can take them. But because the civil society space, we had a meeting about linking space, it's smaller and smaller, and the number of civil society organizations who are on the market, you said to our last meeting, there is very few here, and it's no more a driving thing. And maybe in 10 years we will be even less. Because the funds are very small. EU is thinking, okay, we do this, but it's no serious commitment of us developing the civil society and having a strong civil society which can help the politics and everything. And how you see this?
We still have a panel there to answer to this question. I thank you all around this table for your contributions in the discussion.